going to be talking about the New Millennium gold property in northwestern Ontario. Just to give you an example of sort of where it is, this is the city of Thunder Bay. The property is about 500 kilometers north of Thunder Bay and about 20 kilometers east of the small town of Sulikout. At Sulikout you have rail service, airline service, a population of about 5,000 people, and highway service. The property itself is about 2 kilometers away from a logging road, which is accessible all year round, and is accessible itself by trails that are suitable for ATV. And it's a well-located property in a very active exploration area. It's about 50 kilometers north east of a property called Goldland, which is actively undergoing exploration. It's a fairly well-developed property, has about 1 million ounces, and it's in a belt of rocks that has several gold deposits that are known, and gold deposits in this area have been mined since the 1800s. The property is an old mining property. It's called the Alcona Mine, which was established there in the 1930s. There's a shaft there down to a couple of 100 feet with some workings on different levels on the smaller gold veins. The mine was never operated on a profitable basis, but certainly had lots of good high-grade results from their underground work. The surrounding property is also all staked up now and is held by other interests, and is not being actively explored in the area. This is just a blow-up of the area. This is the claim group itself, overlaying on the sort of general geology. The important features on the general geology are this to the north here, which is a granite intrusive, which is probably a heat source for the mineralization, and this feature here, which stops here but may continue, which is what is known as the Alcona Deformation Zone. It's a shear zone that runs through the property and is probably associated with most of the mineralization. On the property itself, you have this area, which was the former Alcona mine, which is the former gold mine. It has a shaft and some underground workings. You also have this area here, which is called the 99 Trenches area, which is an area of trenching where they have small veins of high-grade gold as well. And this area up here, which is called, well, it doesn't really have a name, it's called the lake zone. And there are some trenches and pits there which have mineralization as well. The general strike of the mineralization on this property is like this to the northwest, and that's the trend of the veins that were mined here, as well as the other showings in the area. This area is relatively well explored. There's quite a lot of work that was done in this part of the zone, including some drilling. This area has trenches but no drilling, and this area has just a few trenches and some sampling. As I mentioned, this area has not really been well explored, but we do know that there are veins there with good grade gold mineralization up to 3/4 of an ounce of gold over narrow widths. Some of the samples from this area run up to 8 ounces per ton gold over narrow widths. But the interesting thing about this area is the fact that although the quartz veins themselves are high in gold, the wall rocks and contain a fair amount of gold in the order of 1 to 2 grams. So there is a potential for a much larger size than was originally thought when the old days, the old-timers were just mining the small quartz veins. So that gives some interesting potential to both of these, this area and this area, where there are high-grade veins known, but we know for sure in this area that the wall rocks carry lower grade but significantly larger thicknesses of mineralization. So what we have is some work that was done back in the 1980s on this property, and basically the property that we now have kind of sits in this area here. It actually also extends off of this map, but the interesting thing about this map is that if you zoom in, this is the area of the original, what was called the original Alcona mine, where the old mine was, and where there were some high-grade veins that they explored. And then they also explored an area over here which is called the pond zone, and it's in this zone that we actually have very high-grade gold, up to 8 ounces per ton, as well as some indication that of thicknesses up to 50 or 60 feet of mineralized material, which has, we don't know exactly what level of gold, but we do know it has trace amounts of gold, whatever that means. In the old days when they did the analysis, They didn't have the kinds of sophisticated chemistry that we have nowadays, so they couldn't analyze the lower grade material, which we now know, based on the price of gold, can turn into to be high grade enough to be actually mineable. So this is the main area of interest in this area, from the old Alcona mine to the pond zone itself. And it was in this area here where some drilling was done in the early 1990s. And it was in this area that they actually had intersections of 50 to 60 feet of mineralization, as well as and beside the quartz veins that had the high-grade gold. So what we have here is a geophysical map that was prepared during the work in the late 1980s, and what this shows is the magnetic anomalies on the property. The interesting thing about the magnetic anomalies on the property is that the descriptions of the drill holes that were drilled in the main pond area describe highly magnetic rocks in the area where they found the gold mineralization. And what we've done here is we've just highlighted some of the areas which have higher magnetic attraction, and the ones that we're interested in are these ones in this area, which include where the former Alcona mine itself sits and where the pond zone sits. And this area here, which is what's called the Trench Lake area, where we have some trenches that have high-grade mineralization. This basically is the sort of outline of the existing property, and you can see that the property extends to the south, to the west, off of this map. The point of interest is that the mineralization that we found in this area seems to be associated with magnetic highs, and that's what these are outlining here. Same as this area here. So it seems pretty obvious that one of the things to do is quickly take a look at all the magnetic highs on the property. This magnetic high has never been explored, nor has this one. And also we don't have magnetic information for the rest of the property off to the west. The drill holes are highlighted on here just in general, and these two drill holes here were both drilled and had, as I said, 50 to 60 feet of mineralization. We're not sure what the grade was because the assays weren't that good at the time. They only assayed really the high-grade veins themselves. The wall rocks, which have disseminated sulfide mineralization, were not analyzed. And the rest of this area was not really well explored. So this would be a focus of our attention. This would be the so-called pond zone. Again, the veins, this is the location of the Alcona mine. The veins in that area don't really show up with any kind of magnetic attraction, and might be showing us that they're just off the edge of the main mineralizing system. The same as in the so-called trench zone, these high-grade magnetic anomalies have not been specifically explored, even though we do know that there's high-grade gold in this area.